Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and coming up in today's newscast, over 10,800 people have now been diagnosed with the coronavirus in the state of Israel. The Israeli Health Ministry rolls out new regulations with Jerusalem taking center stage, and we'll reveal how celebrities are using the Jewish holiday of Passover to battle COVID-19 in a hilarious way. It's a new week, and over 10,875 people have now been diagnosed with the coronavirus in the state of Israel. And of those sick, 174 are in serious condition. 123 are on ventilators. Now, another 155 people are moderately ill, with the rest exhibiting just mild symptoms. Israel's death toll has now risen to 103, with 5 deaths reported in just the last 24 hours alone. Although over 1,300 people have now recovered from the coronavirus in Israel, Israeli health officials are expecting a surge in deaths in the next 10 days because many of those who are already hospitalized and on ventilators are likely to succumb to the virus in the coming days. Now, on a positive note, experts are pointing to the relatively slow rise in the number of patients on ventilators as a source of potential encouragement, and a more or less slow rise in the number of new cases as well. But it's projected that Israel will be falling short of testing 10,000 people a day for the coronavirus in the near future because of a shortage of a key chemical used to analyze COVID-19 tests. This week has seen a significant drop in testing because Israeli labs are in the process of switching over to using a locally produced chemical reagent to fill the need. On Friday, a little less than 6,000 people were tested. The health ministry hopes to bring that number up to 20,000 tests once new equipment is installed in labs across Israel as well. Now, in the meantime, as the coronavirus continues its rampage, everyone wants to know who is the most at risk of contracting COVID-19 here in Israel. The Israeli Health Ministry has just released new data about the first 96 people to have passed away from COVID-19 in Israel. And stats show that almost all those who have passed away from COVID-19 have been elderly or have suffered from pre-existing conditions. 54% have been male and 46% female, but the death rate based on sex is extremely low. The oldest person to have passed away from coronavirus in Israel was age 98, and the youngest was 37, bringing the average age of COVID-19 death to 81 years old in Israel. But when you look at the collective, less than 3% of Israelis who have died from coronavirus were under the age of 60. 9% were between 60 and 69, 21% were between 70 and 79, and a whopping 47% were over the age of 80. In terms of location, Jerusalem has the most coronavirus deaths, a total of 26% of all cases. Bat Yam, Bnei Brak, and Tel Aviv follow afterwards with 8%, 7%, and 5% of deaths respectively. But people have passed away from COVID-19 in over 34 different Israeli cities. Now, all around the world, COVID-19 has carried an added tragedy along with its symptoms. Because of how infectious the virus is, even after death, terminal patients often die separated from family and relatives. And, the relatives themselves are denied a proper goodbye. So the Sheba Tel Aviv Medical Center has come up with a solution. It's a specialized glass chamber. And joining us with more is Sheba Medical Center's international spokesperson, Steve Waltz. So before we start talking about the chamber that you set up, can you tell us a little bit about how many coronavirus patients are currently being hospitalized and what their condition is?
Yes, as of this morning, we had 93 patients. Most of them were in good or moderate condition, but we have also 35 who were in critical condition. Some of them have been hooked up to ventilators. What we're seeing is a lowering of the number of mild cases because they're going to other locations like hotels, whatever. But we are seeing a slow spike in the number of those who need critical care because we are in proximity to places like Bnei Brak and also nursing homes nearby. So we will see a slight spike in the number of critical injured people.
Now, do you have enough respirators for patients that are in critical condition?
Everybody keeps asking us the same question. This is Sheba Medical Center. We are well prepared. We were well prepared even before the first coronavirus patient arrived here from the Diamond Princess ship. We are well prepared, and we have enough respirators for now.
So let's talk a little bit about this glass chamber. How has it been built? How does it protect the health of grieving families? What is it?
It's a simple glass chamber that actually is used when a person passes away in our critical care unit, which is underground. They are put in this glass encased, it's a glass encased area, and it's rolled on a gurney to an area that is, we created a two-way mirror so that families could see their loved ones for the last time without actually entering the critical care corona unit, which is quite dangerous because there are critically ill corona people in there, but it gives them a sense of closure. They can spend 5 minutes looking behind the glass enclosed area and a curtain, say whatever prayers they need to say, or at least have closure with their loved ones.
Well, I imagine that you've had to make a lot of other changes to the hospital as well to deal with these situations. What trends do you predict following the Passover holiday in terms of infection rates and deaths?
So the hospital, as you know, as the National Hospital of Israel, we were the first hospital asked by the Ministry of Health and the government to prepare because we have the most space of any hospital in Israel. We have 220 acres. And even as we speak, another critical care corona unit is being prepared underground in another part of the hospital that will be operational already next week, that will house another 150 to 180 critically ill corona patients, which would give us over 200 beds, literally over 200 beds for critical care unit and almost 500 beds total for all corona care units.
So it seems, I mean, from what you're saying, that we're going to see these numbers growing, that this isn't going to be slowing down anytime soon.
Well, we expect corona to be with us for a while. We do not expect a hard raise in the numbers, but as I mentioned earlier, we did see a small spike in critical care corona patients. We expect that to continue, but we do not expect to see a huge spike in general because of now the government, allocating small hotels for others for mild cases. We want to deal with the cases that are moderate to those who need critical care.
Okay. All right. Well, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us with this update. And, again, kudos to you for all the hard work that you're doing. You guys are really at the front line of this disease. Now, as the data becomes clearer about who is the most severely impacted by the coronavirus, Israel is still rolling out new regulations to stem the spread of the disease. Starting today, all Israelis are required to wear face masks when venturing outside that cover both the nose and the mouth. And this doesn't apply to children under the age of 6, drivers in cars, people alone in a building, or people with mental or medical conditions that would prevent them from wearing a mask. And if you don't have a store-bought mask, that's okay. Masks can be homemade or makeshift. Now, the Israeli cabinet will soon enable the government to order all arrivals at Ben Gurion Airport to enter mandatory state-controlled quarantine, all in an effort to prevent the spread of COVID-19 from abroad. Now, all arrivals will be housed in quarantine hotels for at least 14 days. Well, Jerusalem is also taking center stage this week, especially as Israelis celebrate the Passover holiday. But today, the traditional priestly blessing of the Passover holiday will be performed at the Western Wall with just 10 worshipers present, even though tens of thousands typically take part. This is a scene at the Holy Western Wall, or Kotel, in Jerusalem, as religious Israelis do what they can to find the median between their traditions and social distancing guidelines. But Jerusalem has been the hardest hit by the coronavirus, and about 75% of the infections in Jerusalem have been in ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods. So now 4 zones of the city will be sealed. Zone 1 and 2, which cover northeast and northwest Jerusalem, Zone 3, which covers southwest Jerusalem, and finally Zone 5, which covers much of the city's center. Meanwhile, Jerusalem's Jewish population isn't the only one feeling the difference in the holidays. Today is also Easter Sunday, and the usually bustling Jerusalem streets and market alleyways are largely silent. Still, church leaders explain that their faith and hope is needed now in these challenging times most of all.
Easter is the triumph of life. Despite the sign of death we are seeing everywhere, life will prevail as long as someone is giving life out of love for the others. At Easter. Thank you.
Moving on, Israel's tentative unity government is still up in the air. In fact, negotiations have been stalled between the Prime Minister's Likud and the centrist Blue and White Party since before the Passover holiday. And now President Rivlin has denied Blue and White Chairman Benny Gantz's request for an extension. So unless the two sides can come together before tomorrow, when the mandate ends, a new Prime Minister-elect will have to be chosen. And joining us to discuss is columnist for Newsweek and editor of HistoryCentral.com, Mark Schulman. So Mark, in rejecting Gantz's request, Rivlin says the two sides were too far away from a deal. Do you think that there's any chance that they might pull something together before the mandate ends today or on Monday?
I think it's possible. Look, Rivlin sent a curve clearly. He didn't just say he's not extending it. He also said he's not giving it to Netanyahu. So what he effectively said was, I'm not giving it to Netanyahu maybe because he has all of these criminal indictments or because he doesn't think Netanyahu can get it. I'm going to give the whole back to Knesset, and if you don't come to an agreement by tomorrow night. Now, Likud has been the one that seems to have been backing away, and Netanyahu wanted to get hold of the mandate starting tomorrow, not only because he wanted the mandate to try to form a government, but that would also block any sort of legal maneuvers by Blue and White or the other parties in the Knesset. The moment that doesn't happen, the control of the Knesset remains in the hands of the Blue and White and the other opposition parties. So this is putting a great deal of pressure in my mind on Netanyahu to come to a deal by tomorrow night. That was what Rivlin is trying to do. Also, Netanyahu has always been worried about the fact that the Supreme Court might intervene and not allow him to get the mandate. This is a big open question. The Supreme Court basically, when the request was made beforehand to discuss it, basically said, this is something that can be decided judicially, but it's too early. It's not the opportune moment. If the mandate is actually given to Netanyahu, then that's when they would intervene possibly.
Right. Now, Blue and White officials claim that Prime Minister Netanyahu has decided to withdraw from any agreement to form a unity government. Is that true? And if so, why?
Okay. It's never anything is very clear with Netanyahu. He's a mad politician when it comes to making deals or not making deals. Now, his goal number one was to destroy the Blue and White Party. He did that by offering this bait of a unity government, an emergency need. Immediately we have to do it, emergency. And then from the moment Blue and White fell apart, he'd suddenly been delaying. Supposedly, he's added new demands, which are the question of, once again, having a veto on how the judges are appointed. And also, possibly, they've also brought up the fact that he wants some sort of a rule passed that would allow overcoming the Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court objects to him becoming prime minister. And this is obviously something Blue and White can't do, because Blue and White, at least minimally for any self-respect, has to say that the one thing we're not going to do is pass a law that overrules the Supreme Court. So he's put new requests in. Netanyahu has been very good at doing this over the years. I mean, we can go back 4 elections ago. We thought we were going to have a unity government with Herzog and Netanyahu, and the last minute he did the same sort of thing, put it off, and the last minute he got Avigdor Lieberman to come in instead of Herzog. So there's no reason to think he wouldn't be following the same pattern. Look, there's an absurdity here. The country has never been in as much trouble as it is now. The request for an emergency government is very real, and yet we can't reach an agreement because Netanyahu has been trying to avoid it, I think.
All right. Well, I would like to ask you what your prediction is, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Maybe you can give us one sentence?
I'm out of predictions. Forget it this time. Fourth elections, fifth elections, sixth elections. We'll keep on going.
All right, Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, the Israeli economy is in a difficult spot amidst the coronavirus pandemic like the rest of the world, and now the finance ministry is reportedly putting together a strategy to remove restrictions as soon as possible. ILTV's Aaron Porras has the details.
There are 3 principles to get out of lockdown. First, immediately returning essential and exporting markets like the high-tech industry, who are least affected by the lockdown anyways, must be prioritized. Step 2, young workers before the old will re-enter the workforce as much as possible. And step 3 is to reopen workspaces with smaller populations and less crowded conditions like banks and legal practices. Now, the exact timeline for this plan is not yet confirmed, but reports say that the finance ministry wants at least 50% of non-essential workers back at work by May 3rd, and all workers working by the start of June. Meanwhile, the education ministry is also pushing for resumed activity as soon as possible, with children in special education frameworks returning first, followed by pre-K and kindergartens at 3 to 4 days per week for now. Summer vacation is essentially canceled. The only problem with all this is that neither the finance nor education ministries have coordinated their plans with the health ministry, which is likely to push back hard on these suggestions in fear of a second, more dangerous outbreak. But still, economists predict that if current shutdowns and quarantines continue, we could be heading for a total collapse of the state.
Well, in other news, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is still stuck in the ICU after contracting coronavirus, and Foreign Minister Dominic Raab has been tapped as his interim replacement. But what does this mean for relations with Israel? Well, joining us on Skype to discuss is international affairs commentator Tom Gross. So, first of all, what are Boris Johnson's doctors saying?
Well, the good news is that his condition improved, and in fact, he left the hospital about 1 hour ago after spending a week there in order to continue his recovery in the official residence in the countryside for the British Prime Minister. His spokesperson says that he was seriously ill and could have died, and he will have to continue recovery for really for 3 or 4 weeks, but maybe he'll only, knowing him, he's a workaholic, and he'll probably want to try and go back to work after a week or two.
Right. Now, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab temporarily replacing Johnson, what do we know about him? Can he deal with the health and economic crisis that Britain is currently facing?
Well, he's already served in 2 cabinet positions, so I think he's up to running the country. But he doesn't have, leadership charisma like Boris. But on the other hand, nor does someone like Angela Merkel in Germany, and she does quite a good job. And I think that Raab will continue to chair the cabinet meetings every morning. But now that Johnson is going to be recovering in a private home, the country residence, I suspect that on the really big decisions like extending the lockdown, he will want to be consulted.
Right. Now, Raab is interesting because his father is actually a Jewish refugee. Does this fact have any impact on his policies? And is he known for his connections to the Jewish community?
Yes, so Dominic Raab is the first British Prime Minister with a Jewish parent since Benjamin Disraeli in 1868. And as you say, his father, Peter Raab, escaped at the age of 6 from Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia, and many of his relatives were murdered in Auschwitz. But Raab himself is not connected to the Jewish community, and he only started talking about anti-Semitism in the context of the British Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitism. So he hasn't, for example, been to a speaker at the Conservative Friends of Israel events like others in the cabinet. So I don't think that being Jewish has any particular impact on his policies, and I don't think he's particularly sympathetic to Israel, for example. I mean, neither for or against.
Now let's speak a little bit about Israel, and the UK's relationship. Are we going to be seeing any change in relations as a result of this coronavirus pandemic and as a result of the fact that, Boris Johnson is not able to serve in full capacity right now?
Well, no. I mean, Britain's completely consumed with its own problems. So there are more than 10,000 dead just from a hospital, and probably many thousands of others who've died in care homes or at private homes. So I don't think there's any particular connection to Israel. Having said that, because they're still heading to Brexit, I think they want to cement better relations with Israel going forward once this crisis is over.
All right. Well, Tom Gross, thank you so much for joining us with this update, and of course, well wishes to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Now, this year, Passover has been a bit different than we're used to. The Jewish holiday is usually a time when families come together, but this time around, amidst the coronavirus pandemic, Jews around the world have had to resort to video conferencing to celebrate with their loved ones. Well, a bunch of celebrities have gotten creative to raise money to fight COVID-19, and ILTV's Nittany Manson has the details.
Of course I do.
Of course you do. These are always the best stories.
This is my kind of story. I saw this and I was like, I'm coming on ILTV to talk about this.
Yes, of course.
So basically, a bunch of celebrities got together and made a Passover Seder online that anyone could go watch. So it came out on Saturday, and I can't even explain to you the joy that I got from it myself, so I'm sure that everyone loved it. It's funny, it made me laugh, it made me cry. It was exactly like a regular Seder at my family's house.
All right, well, let's take a look at the beginning of it.
Yeah, let's watch the opening.
We've got a lot to talk about and even more to eat. Take your shoes off, hang your coat up, there's the bathroom, have a seat. So you're stressed by all the stories that you hear on cable news. Well, it's time to trade the cable for a table full of Jews. Hey.
It's amazing.
It's Jason Alexander, for anyone who didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
And he started it out
He's just one of the many celebrities. Who's in this? Who's in this video?
I can't even explain to you, list them all off because there are too many, but I'll give you a little taste.
Yeah.
Jason Alexander, Mayim Bialik, Andy Cohen, Fran Drescher, Billy Eichner, Harvey Fierstein, Elliot and Ilana Glazer,
So
Bette
basically all
Midler,
the...
Idina Menzel. It just goes on and on.
And were these all Jewish celebrities?
Most of them were Jewish. There were a few non-Jews who came to say hi. Take a look.
Yes, Josh Groban, everyone, the greatest Jewish voice in Zero Mostel.
Thank you. I'm actually not Jewish.
Say what now?
Yeah, I'm definitely not either.
You're kidding.
Yeah, none of us are.
No way.
Sorry, are we crashing?
Should we go or?
No. Are you kidding? We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're raising money for the CDC Foundation, so we're gonna have stories and sketches, a lot of laughs and wisdom. Idina Menzel is going to sing.
Idina Menzel? She alone would be enough.
Don't you mean...
Dying. Yes, welcome to our tribe, but listen to the CDC and stay the inside.
So I can't even imagine how much time they put into actually
put
creating
a lot
this video.
of work into this. Yeah, there are dozens of people who sent in videos, I guess, and they put it all together. It was just. They had Deborah Messing and Richard Kind, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
They came to give a little history. Take a look at this one.
A long, long time ago, our great whatevers came to Egypt.
Now you got to remember, this was before Egypt was Egypt. It was Egypt. And there was this famine. But Joseph figured out how to save the Egyptians.
So basically, this is just a much, I guess, an easier way of breaking down the Haggadah, the Jewish holiday. So this is actually something that a lot of you could watch if you don't necessarily understand what Passover is all about, right?
It's great for Jews and for non-Jews because they explain every different part of the Seder. They explain the process. They give up the story, the history. They connect it to today's Jews.
And it's all in layman's terms, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was just great.
All of the proceeds of this video are going towards the development of a
so
vaccine,
there are no proceeds from
right?
the video itself, but they were asking for donations for the CDC Foundation Coronavirus Emergency Response Fund.
Got it. Okay.
So they were asking for donations to help fight this global pandemic that is just
beautiful.
Shaking our world.
Well, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Nittany, for joining us with this.
Problem.
I am going to go home and watch it because I've heard how amazing it is.
It's about an hour, so make sure you have time, but really watch it.
Well,
it's great.
it's worth it. Why not? Something else to do while we're all stuck at home.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for joining us, Nittany.
My pleasure.
All right, now let's take a look at the weather forecast. It's a new week, and today is partly cloudy with a high of 20 degrees Celsius or 69 Fahrenheit. Tomorrow is expected to be mostly sunny and a bit warmer with temperatures reaching 21 degrees Celsius or 71 Fahrenheit. So enjoy that spring breeze. And now before we go, let's take a look at what is going viral in Israel on tubing. So what you're seeing here is actually people praying together on the street in Israel. You could hear this on Passover night, on the evening of the Seder. You could hear people across Israel singing the Passover songs and prayers together. It was absolutely amazing. This not only happened in Tel Aviv, but really just across the country. So for me, it was very emotional. I'm excited to see that it wasn't just in Tel Aviv. All right, now that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.58 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Natasha Kirchak, and thanks for watching.